Hello everyone and welcome to this reflection coming from Killin Manse. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Well, it's a week after Easter Sunday and we're dealing with the aftermath of that. Let me read some words from John's Gospel. A couple of little excerpts from chapter 20. On the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." And then moving forward a few verses to verse 30. Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now, the aftermath of things can sometimes be an anticlimax. I suppose we've all had that experience, some kind of celebration or party or commemoration of something significant, and it goes really well and we get a real lift. And then perhaps the day after or even the week after, there's a little bit of flatness. Now think of a married couple or those who've just been married. You have the wedding day and it's full of drama and family are there, friends are there. It's a momentous occasion for the groom and the bride. They take vows and they're hoping that everything goes well. They've put a lot of planning and preparation into it and it goes past very quickly. But if it goes well, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then perhaps off on honeymoon, and again, a wonderful experience. But then after that, they're back to reality. That relationship then has to be lived out. All the vows that were taken and what that day symbolised have to be worked out in the ongoing relationship of the bride and the groom. That's a wee analogy for the Christian church. We celebrated Easter and we reminded ourselves of just how powerful an event it was. It brought the church into being. And I was on a high, having celebrated every day of Easter, culminating with Easter Sunday itself. And we had a wonderful time down at Loch Tay at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was a great celebration. The weather was great. The dawn chorus of the birds was phenomenal. And then the Easter services themselves. But here we are, a week later, and Easter has passed. Is there a sense of anticlimax? What does it now mean? Last week in church, I talked about the methodology of what, so what, and now what. What, so what, and now what. What is Easter? We talked about the cross and the resurrection and how that was the big bang, in a sense, for the Christian faith. That explosion of God's revelation and power set everything in motion for the birth of the church. That's the what. But so what? Is that just an event in history that we remember once a year? Or does it have greater significance than that? And that's the whole point of unpacking what this faith means. And of course, the now what? What does it mean for us? And again, coming back to the analogy of the wedding couple, working out what that wedding ceremony means in their own lives, day to day. And that's true of all followers of Jesus. You see, it comes down to this. Jesus was either the turning point of history, or we're all wasting our time. Now, of course, my atheist friends would say, well, yeah, they would smile. We think you are wasting your time. But it comes down to that. We can't rescue it by saying, well, Jesus was some kind of good man. He was a good teacher, blah, de, blah, de, blah. So what? That was 2,000 years ago. However, if Easter is true, that in and through the cross and the resurrection, God has revealed himself in a very powerful way, and in a sense set the foundation for what follows and for the mission of the church, then that's a different story. So Easter, if it's not the turning point of history and the whole of creation, then we are wasting our time. And that's why we have to say, now what? The bottom line is, if we accept that it's true, we then have to live it out. Because remember, Jesus says, I have chosen you. He sends his disciples out. As he was sent, he's sending his disciples out. The church comes into being to proclaim and to live out this incredible message that's at the heart of history and at the heart of creation. And remember this. How do we know things? Well, there's three ways we can use an experiment. Does wood float? Okay. Well, set up some experiments and throw wood in. If it floats, there you go. You can demonstrate it. But there's other things that we know because someone's told us. Most of the books in my study, particularly the history books, it's the testimony of people who were there at the time, or historians who are looking at the evidence of what people said and what they did, and it's passed on. It's a tradition of testimony. So that's another way we know things. And then there's personal experience. Well, we can't use an experiment to show and demonstrate the resurrection. It was a one-off event, like all events in history. The Battle of Waterloo only happened once. We can't go back and revisit it. We have to read the testimony of people who were there at the time, and historians will do that and piece things together. And that's what we face in the scriptures. And the Gospels and the letters of Paul were written in a short time after these events. We're not talking about hundreds of years or even a lot of decades. We're talking about the Christian tradition being very close to the actual events. And then thirdly, of course, there's the personal experience. If we take the step of faith and we encounter the risen Christ, so that Jesus, the Jesus of history, becomes the Christ of faith for you and me, and that we experience God's grace in our lives, that is one way, another way that we know things. So here we go. This is what God has done, with an invitation for us to participate in this. So it's about God drawing us in to this wonderful story, and you and me taking our part in that. The revolution began with Jesus and the disciples. But today, you and me, we're part of that revolution. Are we going to take our place and say yes to Jesus? That we want to give ourselves for this great mission, to play our part in whatever way we can. Well, let me suggest this. What else are you going to do with your life? There's lots of things we can do. We can have various careers, we can have various hobbies, activities, sports and interests. But what's the ultimate thing that we're concerned about? So whoever we are, wherever we live, whatever we do, whatever our work, whatever our function, no matter who it is we know and where we live and exist, we're part of something bigger. And for the Christian, that's to be part of this great message and mission and meaning and purpose for the world. Because that's what Jesus is about. And he calls you and he calls me to this mission. So the aftermath of Easter needn't be an anticlimax. It can be a sense of wonderful excitement as we go out into the world in the name of the risen Christ. May His grace be with you and me in these days that lie ahead. Once again, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next week.